Well then, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Friends, where we discuss various topics. And tonight we're going to be talking about whether people of the opposite gender can be friends without it becoming sexual. But before we begin, I'd like to give you a content warning. This live stream may discuss trauma of all sorts to include all types of abuse. Viewers and listeners may find it unsettling and triggering. The guests on our live streams reflect a diverse set of values, morals, and ethics that may not reflect the morals, values, and ethics of the Misfit Amish. If this live stream causes you distress, please seek support from your trusted folks and qualified mental health professionals as needed. You may also cease listening until you're able to listen again. With that being said, I'd like to welcome Jessica, Seth, and James. Hi, good evening. How y'all doing?
Hello.
Hi.
We lost him. That was quick.
Seth said bye.
We have a dropout.
Man, we only had like 2 seconds to talk smack.
Is that how that was going to work?
Yeah, we were going to take advantage of the opportunity, right? Like,
Yeah,
this is,
so log back off so we can talk smack.
I see how this is.
is everybody prepared with your coffee?
Sure.
Okay. So we're all ready for this, right?
I got water.
It's one of the ingredients of coffee, at least.
Yeah. Okay. I just feel
Dan,
like it's
Judge.
lacking.
Hey, Carrie. Hey, Ryan.
Yeah. I see Ryan is listening. Hi. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Judge. And hi, Dan. Welcome, everybody. So, Jessica, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in 30 seconds?
In 30 seconds. So I left a conservative Mennonite background, and I'm a special ed teacher now. Still live very close to the area that I left. Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad you're here, and I'm glad you could join us tonight. What about you, James? 30 seconds or less. Who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm James. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness and an activist. As you see on my hat, it's a YouTube channel I run every week to try to bring awareness about cults and other religions around the world as far as the crazy crap that goes on with them.
Thank you, James. And are you a winner? Oops.
Every damn day.
I had to go there. And last but not least, hi, Seth. In 30 seconds or less, who are you?
My name is Seth Showalter. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and therapist, and I'm also the author of Finally Free, A Surrendered Authenticity. I'm from a Southern Baptist tradition and deconstructed, and I'm a survivor of gay conversion therapy.
Ooh.
So, this is going to be fantastic, don't y'all think? We're going to talk about... We're going to talk about this. So, like, I'm going to tell y'all why we're talking about this. I blame James. This is all James' fault.
You came up with the idea here. It was really your idea. I just went along with it.
Oh,
because I thought it was a good one, though. So,
see, but here's the thing: is like some of us are taught that men and women can't be friends unless there's sexual connotations to it. And so I would like to talk about, like, where does that idea come from? So if y'all want to go around and tell me where you think the idea comes from, that would be great. You're going to go ahead, Jessica?
Where does the idea come from? I think a lot of it comes out of viewing people as objects or something to be feared. I think that's part of it.
Okay, so if you're saying if you view people as objects, that's part of it. But like, where do you learn that? Why would you look at people as objects?
If I speak from personal experience, it came from being taught from a child up, you know?
Yeah.
You're taught from a child up that, like, the opposite sex is dangerous. You could potentially cause yourself or them to stumble and things like that. I think it's there.
Are you trying to say you didn't want to be a stumbling block?
Where does that come from? I mean, I have heard that before.
But where did you learn that?
I wonder.
I'm gonna let somebody else talk.
Oh, Jessica feeling on the spot. Okay. Well, we
Okay,
can go at.
I'll jump in. How about that? So I feel it came, for me personally, from the religion I was raised in. And, you know, that's one of the biggest issues with religion is the impositions they put on everybody's life. And I was always taught you can't be friends with somebody of the opposite sex without sex happening in that relationship. And so you always have that stigmatism of that in your head growing up. And when you're born and raised into a religion that does that, you're going to think about that when you're alone with somebody else. It's just going to happen because they tell you not, they constantly tell you how bad it is, not to do it. And that's all you think about whenever you get in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's all you think about. But like, so I think like what Jessica was getting at is like, you didn't want to be a stumbling block. So like for me, I personally was taught how to walk, how to talk, make myself small. Don't sway your hips so much. Don't talk to men and boys too much. Like don't, I'm looking around because I have a little booklet that I have here that I could read from that has some very interesting ways in which, you know, we shouldn't climb on ladders in front of boys or men lest we entice them to lust after this. And even if you never knew it, you're still enticing them to lust after us. Like we're the fault. Like it's automatically our job to not only monitor us, but also control how men and boys perceive us. And then it's interesting how, like James is saying, well, everything is always about sex. Like everything is always about sex. It's like you can't have a conversation without sex. What you got, Seth?
Okay. So here we go.
It's going to be good.
Well, so the first thing that comes to mind is purity culture. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but there was a book that was written that was very influential in Christian circles called I Kiss Dating Goodbye. That book was extremely damaging and kind of laid out this entire premise that we needed to be separate. And that was really stemming from this entire indoctrination that a lot of us experienced in any type of high control religion that essentially operated based upon power and control. And really where this stems from is this lack of trust and lack of personal autonomy in individuals. And so what we see over a period of time and what we see within specific religious affiliations and doctrines and communities is that there is this level of needing to control people because there's a lack of trust in people. And therefore, we were literally trained that women have to essentially operate in such a way that they prevent men from lusting after them, while as men just had to watch themselves.
As Dan D says, don't ever be alone with the opposite sex, but why are you always hanging out with your own sex? Are you gay?
Well, in some instances that people are.
Some of us are gay, Dan.
Hi.
Hello.
I feel so personally attacked by this comment.
I do a little bit too.
It's okay. We love you, Dan. We love you. It's great.
But no, he's right though, because that is the kind of tropes they use on you. Especially
It's
if
the
you're
rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's like almost like a personal attack, and that's what it really is. You know, or even if you are straight, what are you, gay? Kind of that's how it's always been, and you know, you get defensive about it, and you're like, oh no, I ain't gay, you know, and it's just like then you're on the defensive, and everybody's like getting on you. Okay, so why are you doing this then? You can never please these people that do this to you ever, because there's always going to be something they're going to use to attack you with.
Because the goalpost is ever moving. Is that what you're
Exactly.
getting at? The
Yes.
goalpost is ever moving. It's never quite enough. Or you're always just a little bit too much. I mean, I know I am a lot, but if you need less, please go find less. It's great for you. And maybe that's what you need. But also, like, so when you're like this closeted gay kid inside of an environment like that, how does that affect your ability to build relationships? Or even if you're like, because when you're sitting there and you're talking about this whole idea of like, if you're hanging out with your same gender folks, then now are you gay? So then at that point, I have to ask, like, how did your church talk about gay people? Because it's almost like being gay was used as a very negative thing.
Oh, gay people in my community, in my former church, was such a stigmatism. I mean, we literally, so there was this one guy I knew in the neighboring congregation, and he was obviously gay. And when I say they, I mean like the elders in the congregation basically did like their version of a gay conversion with this guy. Because I remember being told how they would try to train him how to walk like a man and talk like a man and, you know, be more manly and masculine. And Seth is smiling. Is that part of what, I don't know what gay conversion therapy does at all. Is that along the same lines of that?
Well, gay conversion therapy really varies greatly. There is no core modality for this type of therapy. However, it's not too surprising. And so I just chuckled because like I didn't have like them teaching me how to walk and talk, but I definitely had them desensitizing me to the sights, sounds, smells, and scenes of the gay community. And then trying to desensitize me and reprogram me. So, you know, it really depends upon where you land in regards to what they're going to do. But I mean, that's not too surprising.
Yeah. And so anyways, they eventually got him to marry. He eventually got to the point where he married a woman, but I think, and this is just my personal opinion, I could be wrong, and if I am, I apologize, but I think the woman that he married must have gone through something similar too, because she looked like she was a butch in a relationship, and it was like the most masculine woman he was able to find to marry to balance him off to be acceptable in that community. Now, like I said, I could be wrong. I'm not trying to be, you know, judgmental or anything of him, but, you know, being in that religion, it's very hard to please the leaders, especially if you are gay or anything like that.
It sounds like there wasn't really space for him.
No, not at all.
As he was.
Definitely not.
He was supposed to not exist. He was supposed to comply with the demands placed upon him. But then how does that affect the ability to have meaningful relationships?
I know for myself, I was terrified to have a relationship with pretty much anybody, but particularly the opposite sex, because you always had that fear of like, oh, maybe your facial expression is wrong. Maybe you're walking wrong. Maybe you said the wrong thing. It's just a lot of anxiety. And I know personally, we were kind of told to be shamefaced all the time. You know, you see a man, you look down, you put your eyes down. You can't have a relationship if that's how you're viewing the other person. It's really objectifying, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that objectification gets in the way of creating meaningful relationships with people? How so?
100%.
You can't have an equal and fair relationship with someone if you're viewing the other person as an object.
You got more to say about that?
Like
I'm just saying.
when you said that.
Say what?
Well,
It's the way you sipped the coffee when you said it.
We actually talked about this a little bit earlier when you did your TikTok live this morning. And we mentioned how when you're objectifying somebody, you're not seeing them for who they are. You're seeing them for what they are. And when you're doing that and trying to have conversations with that person, you're not trying to really learn about who they are. You have that object in your mind of what this is supposed to be, and it's going to put a strain on any kind of normal relationship with that person.
Does it allow you to have the space to hear that person when they tell you who they are, what they need in life? Or, you know, if you're having an open dialogue with your partner or with somebody that is your friend, does it allow you to actually listen to hear what they're telling you? Or is it getting in the way of you being able to hear because you're constantly telling yourself, like, don't do this or don't do that, or hyperfixated and hyperfocusing on whether or not this is going to be a sexual thing? Could it? What, Seth?
Well, it's complicated for me because, you know, I mean, I'm not straight. So, I mean, are we talking about the context of heterosexual relationships? But, I mean, yes, for sure. I mean, if an individual is trying to live according to their belief system and they're trying to do it in diligence, absolutely it can create obstacles because they're less concerned about the individual and they're more concerned about following the rules and adhering to some type of moral code and not falling outside the lines.
So I want to point out, Carrie Ann has a comment that says that enters the parenting world too. I'm not exactly sure where specifically we were, but I think that even when it comes to, like, I've read books and literature that literally has people talking about things like, it's so gross. Here, let me compose myself. A 4-year-old child sitting on her father's lap, it's normal for him to experience sexual attraction to that 4-year-old child. And she's enticing her father to lust after her. And I think that's where, like, that sexualization of every relationship, every connection between humans is so bad because it enters into every aspect of your life. Even if you don't realize it, even if it's subconscious, it's entering into every aspect of your life. And I'm sorry, but as a parent, I've never experienced sexual attraction to my own child. That's like... disgusting. But I think it also gets in the way of like parents being able to build meaningful relationships. So if we go back to where we started at, can opposite gender folks or same gender folks, can people have friendships without it becoming sexual? Anybody?
The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then what are those friendships based in? What are the foundations of those kinds of relationships?
Well, I could tell you the foundation of the friendship you and I have, and we're both ex-cult members, and we've built a friendship off of that, starting there, but we've also learned more about each other and learned how, when we had conversations, we actually ask each other questions about what life was like for you when you were Amish. You asked me what it was like a Jehovah's Witness. And we listen to each other in those conversations, and we don't just assume based off the stereotypes that we've heard from everywhere else.
And if I may, I'd also like to add to that. So each one of these people on here, I would consider a friend. I've known them for a very length of time, but basically I would consider each one of these people a friend. And what James is saying, like, yes, we connected on that. We connected on shared experiences. But here's another thing is like, I know that James has 3 litters of dogs right now, puppies, 3 litters of puppies in his house right now. We talk about various things. We hear each other and we have that shared respect for each other. And I also have this trust in James that he's not going to turn around and all of a sudden one day I'm going to get a super creepy inbox message that is like, you know what? I really am in love with you. And I just...
I want to go there. I think I'm going to do it professionally.
I just sent you the creepy memes.
Okay, but dark humor memes are not the same. Dark humor memes are not the same. Okay, that's not even close to the same. I am talking about
entire conversation today started. I sent you a meme, and now it's alive on YouTube. I don't know how this happened.
Look, we have great minds here, and we know what works for us. And sometimes we need to have conversations publicly and record them. So I'm really grateful all of you agreed to do this on such short notice. Thank you. Like, I think it's an important conversation to have. But honestly, the amount of men who send me unsolicited messages, like if I talk to them and I treat them like a human being, they crawl in my inbox with this, I love you. I feel this connection to you. You're so beautiful. And it's really, really gross. I thought we were friends, and now I'm just a sexual object. Hi, Seth. Can I help you?
Oh.
Go ahead.
I'm going to keep it in.
Go ahead. I know you want to go there.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to. Keep going.
We're all friends here. Let's go.
So that doesn't happen to everyone.
I didn't say it did.
Okay. It happens to a certain few. And why does it happen?
Because men have been told that they're not men if they have emotions. Men have been taught that they're not men if they cry. Men have been taught that they're incapable of anything beyond having sexual relationships with anybody they perceive as a woman.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that in your inbox specifically, I'm talking about you. And
why are you talking about me?
That's what I was going to say. You know where I'm going to go, right?
Where are you going to go?
Well, you are at a position where you are receiving a certain level of feedback that a lot of us don't receive. And so at that level, you're going to get that feedback, and it sucks, and it's horrible. And I think what happens at that level is that you receive a lot of the ugliness that is happening within our culture, and it sucks. And I'm so sorry that you have to go through this and that you have to get those messages, because it's infuriating.
A little bit, but it also
That's all I was trying to say.
I think it's also indicative of how, you know, we as a society collectively, we need to understand what we teach our children matters, and how we teach our children to navigate the world, and how we teach our children to build relationships, and what we teach our children about emotional intelligence matters. It's like Carrie says, like a husband thinking they own the wife, parents think they own the children. I didn't intend it in a sexual manner. No. But unfortunately, when you're told that holy relationships end in marriage, and your idea of a relationship doesn't really have space for you to have meaningful connections as friends, what does that subconsciously teach you to do? So I just want people to have a little bit more attention that they pay to what they're doing. Why am I doing this? A little bit more attention. Is it okay for you to have friendships with people that are of the same or the opposite gender that do not revolve around sex? But how do we get there as a society collectively, Seth? Like, I'm asking this question. I'm going there.
How do we get there collectively as a society? Well, we get there collectively as a society by the results. I read that comment. We get there as a result of society by the you can take it down, by the destigmatization of we look at it through essentially like taking steps towards reducing the stigma that is currently at play within our culture and society, that essentially shames people for their sexuality and shames people for sexual actions. You know, and this is really interesting. Even if we compare it culturally speaking, I think that there's something big to be said about this looking at a cultural context. For example, like let's look at what's happening in the US versus other countries. For example, sexual expression and things like that are very much more open in other countries. And I'm really curious to see, I don't know, but I am really curious to see, do these trends continue to float in those other countries? Or is this a specific American phenomenon? And is it because we restrict so much of, you know, sexuality and what that means? And then also, as part of that, are we also looking at, you know, well, crap, I'm going to lose what I was saying. But just like shame. There's so much shame around sexual actions in our culture, and there isn't in other cultures. And I think that plays a big role. I'm
going to say this. I lived in a country and have been in places where people viewed nudity as just a human state. Nudity in public places. And there was a whole different environment around the way that sex was viewed, approached, and taught. And I am grateful for that experience. I think it does affect how you teach your children when you experience something like that versus American culture. But I want to go back to Linda Joy's comment. And part of the reason I want to go back there is like, she said, I have to say, though, that you don't have to be at that level. I received the same messages a lot. I literally know people who have had, and this is particularly a phenomenon for women and AFAB people. They experience this repetitively. And I think it happens much more to people when they are coming from plain backgrounds. And here's why. It's because people fetishize us. They literally fetishize us. And that is a repeat phenomenon that keeps happening. And that's also part of it. It's like they look at us And they think that is the display of a good, godly woman. That is a submissive woman. That is a virtuous woman. That is the kind of woman that I want. And then they act accordingly. They feel like it is their God-given right to crawl into our inboxes like that. Furthermore, if you do anything with these types of men that involves you spending time with them, what happens is they literally conflate feeling connection with somebody as being romantically in love with somebody. They're not romantically in love with me. I promise you they're not. Thank you. But then when we go back to how we destigmatize everything, I think part of it is absolutely right. We have to destigmatize and we have to remove the shame. The other part is we have to allow the space for people to have emotions. And we have to consider that maybe what we're being taught and what we were taught, even if we don't recognize it, it can still come out of us subconsciously in the ways we treat other people. And even if we don't understand it, if somebody is telling us that we are objectifying them, maybe it's time to go examine that. And I have a handy dandy little thing to show everybody. Do we want to talk about that? Have y'all ever seen this before?
No.
No?
No, I haven't seen it.
Can you read
make it a little bit bigger?
Let me see. How's this?
That's better. Thank you.
So it says, when painful thoughts and feelings start showing up in our lives, there are many ways we try to avoid or get rid of them. Distraction, opting out, thinking strategies, and substances. Have you ever heard of this, Jessica?
Not specifically this, no.
Do you all think this could be helpful?
Maybe the substances part.
Really?
I mean, it's not going to hurt.
We're being serious here. This is for real.
But that's what struck me, though, when I read that, like using strategies, but yet on the list of that, the acronym there is substances. Like, I mean, I get that there are prescriptions that help when you have issues, you know, mentally, psychologically, and whatnot, but like, that's not always, finding what works for you is not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to in any way endorse anything illegal here, because that's not the route to go either. But it's just, that's just what stuck out to me, because that's what a lot of people seem to want to go to first thing, is that right there, instead of looking for other strategies to cope with it.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, often people who have been taught some of these harmful beliefs, they really struggle in feeling connected to other people. And they don't know how to connect to other people. And so sometimes they just feel like they just want like something to make it all go away.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that is where people turn to substances. Sometimes people have mental health conditions that can benefit from using prescribed medications as prescribed. Okay. They can benefit from healthcare, like mental health care too. But also having the tools to examine our own beliefs is something that can help us sit with the uncomfortableness. I'm going to give y'all an example. I was talking about suicide one day with somebody and I said the person committed suicide, and I was corrected. I was told, and that's not how we talk about it. What we really should be saying is we should be saying died by suicide. For me, that's not something I was aware of, but now that I'm made aware of it, I'm going to do my best to honor that, because if it humanizes that person more, and it also destigmatizes some of the things that go on, the stigmatization around mental health, then that's important. The same thing can apply to anything, like when people are telling you, like, hey, like, you know, you're making me really uncomfortable because right now you're doing this thing that we call like love bombing, or like you're waxing and waning or whatever, and I feel like this is where you're going with this and it's really uncomfortable. Maybe you can just sit with it and examine it, and even if you don't understand it, you can at least respect that person. Because, I mean, I can tell you that with every single one of these people, I've literally sat there and been like, I don't quite understand this, but I'm going to respect you. What do y'all think?
I think that's a healthy part of any relationship. There's always going to be things that you don't maybe identify with or understand, but having space and respecting that person, I think that's healthy. Like equal respect and honor, even if you don't understand it.
That's where I think a lot of people lack anymore, is trying to understand others, trying to have that, you know, respect for them enough to understand where they're coming from and why they're coming from that position.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Seth? You're just sitting there.
You just showed dots, so I'm just on a roll. No, I would say one of the core components is of any relationship or friendship is equality, and part of that equality component, that foundational core element of friendship or relationship, is essentially being able to see the other side and having equality in that relationship. And I think that what we need to be striving for is understanding, as James clearly stated. So, and also, if we go into relationships thinking that we know everything, how does that lead to the expansion of friendship?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also think too, you know, like, of course, I was raised in Jehovah's Witness, and I know it's prevalent in the Amish, and even your background too, Seth. You know, we were always told that, you know, the husband is the head of this household, and there's that dominance factor that he's supposed to have over his wife, over his children, and there's such an imbalance in those relationships, because everybody in the household is supposed to cater to the whims of that man. And I've seen this in live action, especially with my father-in-law's household. His wife and his kids were always on edge about anything that he would get upset about or want done. And, you know, it was just a total, whenever I was there, I felt so uncomfortable. I never had that attitude, even when I was in the religion. I always felt that my wife was my equal, not somebody that I need to lord over and, you know, be a domineering force towards. But those attitudes are still prevalent in the religions, and breaking free of that, you know, I found it easy to break free because I never thought of my wife that way. But for others, when they're caught up in that, they can't break free of that to see others for who they are. They still have that attitude, well, I'm the male, I have the, you know, last say, I've got this dominance, even in situations where they're not at home and don't have any real say in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Did you experience that, Jessica?
Yeah. Yeah, in 1,000 ways. But I was specifically thinking tonight about the way that we couldn't even go and talk to another man in the church. We had to talk through either our brothers or our father.
See, like, I want to point this out, though. It's like once I went with the young folks, though, and even before I went with the young folks, if we were just informally at the house, then we could talk to other men somewhat, but we were only supposed to talk certain ways and walk certain ways and all of that. But like, yes, the father was the head of the household. And that whole thing that James was talking about, that existed in many homes. But I always find it interesting how, like, there's this difference between, like, the amount of control that, like, Jessica experienced versus, like, what I experienced. But I was also older Amish, so it's interesting because it was like a different kind of control, but it was still control.
I got a question for you, Jessica. When you say you had to speak through your brother or your father, what did that exactly mean?
If we had any concerns, if we had ideas about something, even something as simple as I was in charge of like gift baskets for people that were sick in the church. And if I had any questions, about where the money was coming from, I had to go to my dad or my brother and have them go to the man in the church and relay the concern and then bring it back to me through my father. I could never go and speak to a man.
No. Like, here's the thing. Like, we didn't have, like, necessarily, we would be allowed our allowance. Like, if we were supposed to go to the store to buy something, we were given this amount of money and we had to account for every, like, dime, right? But in the same token, if we made a scrapbook page for somebody, we would make the scrapbook page and put it together.
You didn't have
if we
to
were
have
making if we had the things, then what do we need? What?
I mean, to make a gift for somebody, like a missionary family or whatever.
We never had missionary families.
Oh, that's right.
What are you talking about? No, if somebody had an adverse incident, like let's just say they had a farm accident or there was a buggy accident or something, people would bring cards, they would do all of these things. Like, no, it wasn't a like you had to go like get like all this whatever. If they did like a bake sale or something, then it was perhaps organized like that. But like to do like basic things like just bring over a casserole or take over a casserole, like that was like you just did it.
That kind of thing would have been brought up at the brothers meetings and it had to have approval.
The brothers meetings?
There were yeah. All of the men came together on a Wednesday night and the women were not permitted to attend. And they would talk about business. The length of women's dresses and coverings and
the important stuff.
The important stuff. The women were never involved.
See, but like if we organized a bake sale, like they would just organize like these women would do this. The women would organize it. Like I'm so confused. Anyways. But the other thing is like Linda's talking in the comments about you couldn't be too loud around boys. Yeah, that's right. That's right. If you went to the volleyball game, let's talk about segregation. So in our churches,
I'm picturing it.
First off, the settlements that I lived in, I think there was maybe one of them that allowed volleyball games. Second off, I dated somebody in another settlement and they were allowed to play volleyball there. Okay. And the ways we got in trouble for playing volleyball, y'all, it was wild. It was wild. It was just I can't even. I can't even describe it.
Were they really called brothers meetings?
Yes.
You're still going there.
They
Really?
were called brothers meetings.
Yes,
Seth,
because everyone's brothers and sisters.
Seth, inside of the type of Mennonite church that she was in, they had Wednesday evening meetings, the brothers meetings. They would handle any and all business, especially business like policing women's dress.
Coffee and gossip.
All the important stuff. But I'm just saying. They could have come up with a more original name, like the brothers meetings.
But they were brothers in Christ. Let's not judge our Mennonite neighbors here.
So did you all call each other brothers and sisters within your communities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. See, Jehovah's Witnesses did that too. We were brothers and sisters.
We couldn't use Mr. and Mrs. That was too worldly.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Whenever we were at our meetings or church services and Jehovah's Witness, it would be, oh, hi, brother so-and-so, hi, sister so-and-so. It was always that, never Mr. or Mrs., just like you said.
It was such a transition for me moving into education after leaving the community because everyone is Mr., Miss. It was so weird for me.
Are you okay, Seth? You look like you're shell-shocked over this whole brothers meeting thing.
It sounds it's so cultish.
Yep. Nailed it.
We're not saying it's a cult.
I know. I'm not saying it's a cult. I'm just saying brothers meetings sounds very, it's in that vein.
And there was never much information about what exactly happened, and they weren't supposed to come home and talk about it.
Which that sounds like, what's the other one? It's not a religious thing, but they have secret meetings behind closed doors. Do you know what I'm talking about?
There's lots of places that have that, like the Masons.
That's it. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Oh, I don't know a lot about that.
They got secret things. Are y'all ready?
What's up?
Y'all talking about what y'all called each other reminded me of something. Like, here's the thing. It's like we would go around and we would say, like, for example, like, let's just say hypothetically, and I know this will never happen because we're all a little gay. Anyways, but let's say Seth and Jessica were married. We would call Jessica Seth Jessica.
What?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm from a Southern Baptist church that put me through gay conversion therapy, and I thought I had it pretty bad, but by golly, I don't know about that now.
I didn't say it was bad. I just said that. Okay, so to me, like if you were a child, like let's say James was my father, it would be James Mary.
I'm just going to drink my coffee. I might need to run away and get another cup. Might be at that point.
But do
that
you
makes
think?
Me think of something though?
But do you think? Go ahead, Jessica.
Do you know the shock when I left and I saw that people would send wedding invitations with the woman's name first? I was mind blown. I was like, what is this? You can do that? I was shook.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Okay.
I'm sorry, Seth. I kind of broke you.
Yeah, I was shook at the two.
No,
I was. What?
Do you see the comments? This is the biggest compliment I've ever received. The second to last comment. Do you see that?
Are you talking about this? So you're gay or not?
That means that I'm passing as straight. That's the biggest.
I don't think they're asking about me. I don't think that's a question.
No, I think they're talking about me.
I just I just want to know, like, do y'all think that the way we talk about people, like we call people our brothers, and we have this whole idea that like people, we call our daughters by their or children by their father's name, and then once they get married, like the sons, they now have their own name and their wife is attached to it. Do you think that does something to the way people think about each other, and could it affect their relationships? Don't all jump at once. I just have questions. I don't know what that means.
Couldn't hear you, Seth.
Say it again.
Do you think that when you sit there and children are called like James Mary, and then, or like James Seth, for example, because you always have to attach the father's name to the child. But then when boys grow up and they get married, then they are attached to their own pillar of the name. They have, like, for example, James would get married to Jessica. Again, would never happen. James is already happily married. Anyways, it would be James Jessica. Like, do you think that affects how people view relationships? Can it affect how they view relationships? Because another thing is like we weren't allowed to have middle names, and our middle initial was supposed to be the first letter of our father's first name. So like our names should always be attached to our fathers. Could it affect how people view relationships?
Well, it kind of strips away personal autonomy and identity. It makes it so that the person is attached to the other person, to where they are essentially, their identity is wrapped up in the man, rather than being individualized. And therefore, when they're considered or looked at, they're just deemed as being part of the other person, not themselves.
Isn't it kind of like ownership, like a symbol of being owned by someone else? And then once you leave that and you're no longer owned by someone else, you're just kind of out on your own.
Charity says, yep. I just want to point out that for me, I mean, we were also taught like to watch how men treat animals, because sometimes that can be a gauge of like how men will treat women. Were y'all ever taught anything like that?
I remember being taught that in youth group.
Never anything about animals, but I always heard how a man or a guy treats his mother is how he'll treat a wife.
Okay. So, what about you, Seth?
I'm a little lost. This conversation keeps flowing, and I'm zigging and zagging as best as I can.
Look, we're nothing if we are not a lot. We told you this.
I'm trying my hardest.
Were you ever
ADHD?
Were you ever taught anything about how men treat animals?
Oh, that line. Yeah. So no. In my faith tradition, men were not regarded in that way.
Okay.
Men were essentially we were not compared to animals. However, there was implications as to temptation, and that we had to essentially control the lusts of the flesh. So there was a big emphasis on the flesh in that regard. Does that make sense? I hope I answered that.
Yes, that makes sense. What about, like James was talking about, like how people treat their mothers? That was supposed to be a gauge of like what kind of a husband they would be. Reach.
Yes. So that is definitely a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think that affects your ability to have relationships positively or negatively, and why?
I think it affects in just which part? What James said or what I said?
Both.
What I said, I think it negatively impacts because we're essentially told that we can't control ourselves. And we're essentially told that we are nothing but lustful people that are at the will of the flesh. And therefore we, we're nothing more than just lustful people. And I think that that's demeaning. In regards to what James said, in regards to looking to your mother as a way to kind of know how you treat your mother will kind of be an indication of how you will treat a future spouse. I think that there's some application there.
Okay.
Does it hurt relationships? I don't know.
Fair enough. I just wonder what you thought of it. But also, I wondered if, like, the whole being taught, like, you're a lustful, sinful person and you can't control yourself and all of those things, like, do you think it's dehumanizing people?
Yes.
Okay. So what should we teach people? What should we teach our children instead of that?
I think we should be teaching children personal autonomy and choice. I think that we should be teaching personal value, integrity, and purpose. I think that we should be teaching that the individual has, well, I think that kind of sums it up. I mean, personal autonomy and choice. I mean, like, it's huge.
Yes.
And I think that what we see from even on this panel, from what a lot of people have shared, it's been pretty evident that those things were not present in our upbringings.
Right.
From both the male and female perspective.
Which is why when Carrie asked, does denying teach how to handle it? No. A culture of silence does not teach you how to handle it. It does not equip you to how to handle it. It doesn't even teach you how to be a parent and how to teach your own children. So what Seth said is absolutely right. But we are coming up on the top of the hour, and I'd like to thank everybody for listening and commenting. But if y'all want to go around and give me a little 30-second exit statement or, ending statement, you're welcome to. Starting with Jessica.
This conversation's been interesting. But I think one of the most important things is humanizing each other instead of looking at the opposite sex or the same sex as a sexual object. That's my takeaway.
Thank you. And do you have any messages for anybody who may have experienced the same things that you were talking about?
I think it's important to remember that there are other options and that you should explore things outside of what you've been taught. And I don't know, that's a big question, but it is better on the other side.
Oh, it is. Thank you. What about you, James?
I wanted to add one last thing to what Seth was saying a minute ago, because he was saying, teaching children about autonomy and everything. One other thing I think is important to teach your children is about consent as well.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is very huge when it comes to relationships, is having consent, because you do, if religion teaches you that even if you're married, you owe it to your partner to have relations whenever, wherever they want. If that partner doesn't want it, you are not owed it. Consent should be freely given, and it can be taken away in just as quick of a time as well. So I just wanted to add that real quick.
And I just want to add in, consent can also be taken mid-intimate act.
Mm-hmm.
Does not matter if it's at the beginning, before, after, during. Well, after is kind of pointless, but during, and even at the ending of it. Like if your partner says no at any point in time, no means no. Stop.
Yeah. So, sorry, I just wanted to add that.
Oh, no, that's a good one. Do you have any words of advice, encouragement for anybody who may have experienced the same things as you?
I would tell people to get introspective on themselves and ask themselves why they may be holding on to some of these ideas, and what about it could benefit them or others. If it's not going to benefit your relationships with other people, you need to stop doing it. So you need to really search yourself and search for things outside of what your religion or background may have taught you, so that way you can learn different perspectives and grow as a person. When you start growing as a person, you'll help others around you grow as well, because then you're really looking at people for who they are and not just an object that you were taught that they were.
Thank you, James. And what about you, Seth?
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. I greatly appreciate it. And what I have really enjoyed about this conversation is just the openness of this dialogue and the meaning of what we're talking about. This is a very relevant topic that affects people both inside and outside the faith, of any kind of faith, really, because it's prevalent within our culture and we see it across the board. And I just think this is so important. And I want to say thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you. And do you have any words of advice or encouragement for people who may have experienced something similar to you?
You have worth and value. And if there's anything I could have done differently, it would have been that I would have done a little more research, and I would have really focused on who I was as a person instead of listening to all of the voices around me. And I think finding self-discovery and self-identity is extremely important within the confines of the religious practices that we often find ourselves in. Oftentimes we're stifled and we're put in positions where we are being told what to think and what to do. And I want you to know that you have a voice and you can have choice, and that you matter and that you are worthy. And know that you can step out of these practices to find your true self.
Thank you. I wanted to thank all of you for being here. Jessica, James, Seth, thank you so much for having this conversation, because I really needed to have it. And I really needed to be able to talk about it openly. I appreciate the open dialogue. I also appreciate everybody that has been listening and commenting. Thank you so much. Thank you. But in conclusion, I'm just going to say it one more time. Men, women, people of all genders can be friends with the same and opposite sex without having it become a sexual or romantic relationship. Sometimes the need for connection that we have as humans is the need for us to feel like we matter, to feel like we're a little less alone. And where that comes from can vary. It doesn't have to be a specific type of gender person. It can be various people that you meet as you go about your day. You can see the humanity in the people who are kind to each other. You can watch it happening as you walk down the street. You can also see it in nature. You can see it everywhere you go when you are watching how people treat each other. But you also deserve to feel connected to people. You are enough. And I appreciate you being here. We really couldn't do this without you. And I'd also like to add our wonderful ending, which is going to be, we would like to thank our Patreon subscribers for making sure that we can do this and continue doing this in 2024. This is produced and funded by the Misfit Amish. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and until next time, y'all go forth, be curious, and learn more. Live your best lives. Be you.